In the year 1431, inside the cold stone walls of Rouen, a young woman stood trial, not for theft, not for treason, but for claiming that God had spoken to her. She was 19 years old. Her name was Joan of Arc, a peasant girl, barely literate, who had risen to command armies, crown kings, and inspire a broken nation. But now, stripped of armor and chained in a prison cell, she faced a court that had already decided her fate. What followed was not just a trial. It was a tragedy cloaked in legality, a drama drenched in politics, a farce hiding behind faith. This is the dramatic history of Joan of Arc's final trial. And by the end, you'll see how one voice can shake a kingdom, how courage can terrify the powerful, and how the echoes of a girl's truth still thunder through time. Stay with us, because this isn't just history, it's human.
Let's rewind just a few years. France is bleeding. The 100 Years' War has left the land fractured, with rival claims to the throne. English forces, with the support of the powerful Duke of Burgundy, hold much of northern France. The rightful heir, Charles VII, is uncrowned, powerless, and on the brink of losing everything. Enter Joan, a teenage girl from Domremy who claimed to hear voices, saints, she said, guiding her to lead France to salvation. It sounds insane. Imagine today, a farm girl with no military training, no political background, walks into the Pentagon and says, "Put me in charge. God told me what to do." That's how ridiculous it seemed. But here's the twist. She did it. Joan inspired the French army, lifted the siege of Orleans, and personally escorted Charles to Reims to be crowned king. She didn't just fight. She gave France its heartbeat back. But power, as always, makes enemies. And when Joan was captured by the Burgundians in 1430, they sold her to the English, not for honor, not for peace, for 10,000 livres.
Joan was taken to Rouen, a city under English control. Here, her fate would be sealed, not by the sword, but by the word. Her captors didn't want a battlefield execution. They wanted something more permanent. They wanted to destroy her legacy, to make her a heretic. Why? Because if Joan was a heretic, then Charles VII's coronation was meaningless. His rule could be discredited, his rise illegitimate. It wasn't just about killing Joan. It was about erasing the hope she embodied. And so, a trial was arranged, led by Bishop Pierre Corchon, a staunch ally of the English, a man whose very name would become synonymous with betrayal. Now ask yourself, can a fair trial exist when your judges want you dead?
It's February 21st, 1431. Joan sits before her judges, over 40 learned men, theologians, doctors of law. She wears chains. Her hair is shorn. She's denied access to legal counsel, threatened with torture. But she holds her ground. The court begins their questions, her visions, her voices, her clothes, her loyalty. What did the voices say? Were they saints? Why did she dress as a man? Her answers are stunning, not just for their clarity, but for her composure. She doesn't dodge, she doesn't crumble. God must be served first, she says, and I will answer you as well as I know how. At one point, a theologian tries to trap her with a trick question. Do you know if you are in God's grace? If she says yes, she's guilty of presumption. If she says no, she's guilty of heresy. Joan's reply, if I am not, may God put me there. If I am, may God so keep me.
Boom! She outsmarts the scholars. This is a teenage girl facing the full weight of the church and the English state.
But they press harder. Joan's faith, her visions, these weren't just spiritual matters. They were political weapons. If the saints had truly spoken to her, then she was a prophet. And if she was a prophet, then everything she did, from the battlefield to the coronation, was divine. So they must prove her voices were lies, that she was tricked by demons, that she was mad. They demanded she recant her claims. She refused, and so the questions grew more vicious. They brought up obscure theological debates, pushed her into contradictions, repeated questions in different forms, anything to catch her. But Joan held on. She wasn't a theologian. She was simply faithful. One bishop later wrote, "We were amazed at her memory and intelligence. Many of us were moved to tears." But tears wouldn't save her. Let's talk about one of the strangest and most infamous parts of the trial. Joan's clothes. Yes, her clothes. She wore men's armor in battle, and in prison she continued to wear male clothing. Why? Because in male clothes she could tie them tightly and protect herself. In female clothes, she risked being assaulted. That's not metaphor. She had been threatened. Guards, soldiers, even clergy. But the court insisted this was heresy. They used Deuteronomy 22:5, a verse condemning cross-dressing, as legal ammunition. They weren't just trying to destroy Joan. They were trying to dehumanize her, make her less than a woman, less than a person. And then they offered her a deal. May 24th, 1431. Joan is brought to the cemetery at Rouen before a large crowd. They tell her she will be burned that very day, unless she signs a confession, a paper renouncing her voices, her visions, her clothes, her mission. She is terrified, alone, exhausted, starving. And so she signs. She abjures. She agrees to wear women's clothes, to submit to the church, to remain silent. But here's the twist. The court lied. They altered her confession. They inserted lines she never spoke. And then they put her back in prison anyway. Not with nuns or clergy, but with the same guards. The abuse returned. So Joan did the only thing she could to protect herself. She put her male clothes back on. And just like that, they had her. It was all the court needed. Joan had relapsed. She had abjured her heresy, and now she had returned to it. Under church law, this made her a repeat offender, a relapsed heretic, which meant death. The court moved swiftly. No more questions, no more trials. The verdict was already written. Joan of Arc, hero of France, soldier of God, symbol of resistance, was condemned to die. May 30th, 1431. Joan is led through the streets of Rouen to the old market square. The crowd is silent. Some weep. Even the English soldiers are shaken. Joan asks for a cross. A sympathetic English soldier finds one, made of wood, hastily assembled. She holds it to her chest. She begs for a priest. She shouts the name of Jesus until her final breath. And then she is gone. A teenage girl burned alive before a watching world. They hoped to erase her, but they only immortalized her. 25 years later, a second trial was held, a retrial. Witnesses came forward, soldiers, clergy, ordinary people, and the truth came out. Joan had been innocent, her trial a sham, her judges corrupt, her accusers liars.
In 1456, she was declared a martyr. In 1920, she was canonized, Saint Joan of Arc. Not just a soldier, not just a saint, but a symbol, a reminder that one voice, no matter how small, can shake empires.
So, what do we take from Joan's trial? It's easy to say she was a victim, but that's not the full story. She was a fighter. Even in the face of betrayal, of politics, of prejudice, she never stopped believing in what was right. She didn't ask to be remembered. She asked to serve. And in doing so, she carved her name into history. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, share it, because history isn't just about kings and battles, it's about people. People who dared to stand alone and change everything. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more dramatic history brought to life. We'll see you next time.